The content in this podcast is fully AI generated based on real news articles. Listener discretion is advised. For more detailed information and the original context, please refer to the links provided in the show notes, which direct you to the news articles this podcast is based on. Enjoy the show.
Okay, so have you ever listened to a podcast and thought, wow, a robot could do this?
Well, with the way some podcasts sound, I wouldn't be surprised.
You know, it's funny you should say that because we're actually diving into something pretty wild today. We're looking at this podcast, the AI Tech News podcast, and it's back for a second season.
Interesting. I've heard of it. Isn't that the one where the hosts are AI?
That's the one. Totally AI generated, every bit of it, which is already kind of mind-blowing. But what's really got me hooked is they're saying they've really enhanced the, get this, dialogue narration for this season.
Dialogue narration. Okay, I see why you put that in quotes. It sounds, well, very technical. What are they really getting at there?
Right. I mean, it makes sense. Like they're trying to make the AI hosts sound more natural, right?
Exactly. It's all about the natural language processing. They've probably made some big leaps in how the AI processes and generates language.
Yeah.
The goal is to make it sound less like a robotic script and more like, a real conversation.
Like we're having right now.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Remember those early chatbots, the ones that sounded, well, completely artificial, this dialogue narration thing? It suggests they're trying to bridge that gap, make it feel more human, more engaging.
So less stilted, more natural. And it sounds like they've really committed to it this season. They had, if you remember, a few hiccups last time around with some, let's call them technical issues.
Oh, I remember. It's bound to happen, though, right?
Yeah.
AI is constantly evolving. Overcoming those technical challenges is part of the process. The fact that they're back for another season, it tells me they're confident they've made some serious progress.
They've clearly been busy ironing out the kinks. Which makes you think, what's the big deal about making this AI podcast so good? Why bother? Well, they want to bring AI news and analysis to a wider audience.
And that's huge. Because AI can seem intimidating, right? But imagine listening to a podcast that breaks down complex topics in a way that anyone can understand. That's what they're going for.
And let's be honest, most people hear about AI and it's either from some sensationalized headline or, a sci-fi movie. To make it actually approachable, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. If this podcast can make people less intimidated by AI, more interested in learning about it, well, that's a big step in the right direction.
It really makes you think about where all of this is heading. We're not just talking about AI as some abstract concept. We're listening to it, experiencing its creativity firsthand.
Exactly. Pay attention to the nuances this time around, okay?
Mm-hmm.
How the hosts interact, the pacing of the conversation, even the music. These are all creative choices. But instead of a human making those decisions, it's an algorithm.
So is it really AI creating this podcast, or are we blurring that line between creator and creation? Something to think about, right?
Definitely something to think about.
The future of podcasting, am I right?
And maybe even more than that.
AI, it's absolutely everywhere these days. And it's not just, tech insiders talking about it anymore. It's like you see it everywhere. From those crazy accurate sports predictions everyone's been talking about to like those rumors of AI-run political campaigns. It's getting hard to ignore,
It has been a pretty quick change.
Yeah.
I mean, going from these niche things to something that's a part of our lives now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what we're diving deep into today, right? We've been going through a ton of articles about these new AI products and all the crazy stuff people are doing with it. We even found some things that made us wonder, is this really happening?
And we want to really focus on what's happening right now, not just the future. How is all this stuff actually affecting us every day? How we make decisions, even how entire industries are changing.
Yeah, for sure. So, let's start with something I bet everyone listening is familiar with: your phone. Apple just came out with their newest iOS update, and it's packed with AI features. Some of them are surprisingly useful.
Hmm.
Have you ever, like, taken a photo that's a little blurry and wished your phone could just fix it for you?
Oh, yeah.
Or needed to, like, write a really professional email and not sound like a total goofball?
All the time.
Well, now your phone can basically do that for you. It's a perfect example of this whole trend of AI becoming more integrated into the things we already use.
It's not just separate apps anymore.
Right. It's becoming like this invisible helper in everything. And it's not just our phones either. Google came up with something super interesting called NotebookLM. And like for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by, just too much information out there, and I feel like that's all of us these days, it's like having a super powered research assistant powered by AI right in your computer.
So instead of just taking notes, it actually understands what you're working on.
Exactly. You can feed it all sorts of stuff. Research papers, articles, even entire websites, and it'll pull out the most important information, find key quotes, and get this, it can even help you come up with new ideas based on what it's learned.
Wow. That's wild.
Right. It's like having this deep dive done for you so you can cut to the chase. But then it gets even more meta because apparently NotebookLM can also generate podcasts from your notes.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. Like, if that doesn't make you think twice about the future or what we're doing here, I don't know what will. And it's not just creative stuff either. We're seeing AI in things like sports betting, where it's making some crazy accurate predictions.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Like way
Uh-huh.
more accurate than just like your average sport fan making a guess.
Way more. It's serious stuff.
Yeah.
These are sophisticated AI systems that are looking at tons of data, like player stats and historical game data. They even consider things like the weather.
So it's like they're thinking about all the things a human would, but like a million times more.
Yeah, basically, they're processing information on a scale that we can't even comprehend. So it makes you wonder, is it even a fair game anymore if you've got AI giving you the inside scoop?
Right, right. And what does it mean for like the whole sports world? If machines start doing a better job than even the pros, these aren't just what ifs anymore. It's really happening.
Exactly. And, it's not just sports that's being shaken up by this. Remember that whole thing we mentioned about AI predicting elections? It's about this company called Aru. And what they're doing is way more complex than just, looking at what's trending online.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fascinating. What's really interesting about Ari is that they're not just like analyzing what people say they think.
Mm.
They're actually trying to like recreate the whole process of how people form opinions in the first place.
Yeah.
But like digitally.
Okay, you're gonna have to break that down for me. How do you even teach AI to, like, vote? That just sounds like something straight out of a movie.
Okay, so imagine you could build this, like virtual version of a whole bunch of voters, right? Aru starts with real information about people like their age, where they live, how much money they make, their political views, even things like who they're friends with on social media, all the stuff that makes us.
So it's like a giant online focus group, but with AI instead of real people.
Exactly. But here's the really cool part. These AI agents, they don't just exist in a vacuum. Aro actually exposes them to all the same kinds of information we see online, like simulated news feeds, social media interactions, even targeted ads, just like the stuff we're bombarded with every day.
So you're saying they're basically letting these AI bots get sucked into the same political rabbit holes that we do, and from that they can predict how real people will vote.
Yep, pretty much. Aru's argument is that this whole approach actually gives you a much more accurate and nuanced picture of how voters make up their minds. Because let's face it, it's not just about what we say we believe, it's about how we're influenced by all the stuff we see online, even the misinformation.
And looking at their track record, it seems like they're onto something. They've been really good at predicting some recent elections, even in cases where the traditional polls totally missed the mark.
Right. It really makes you think, like, could this change everything about how we think about politics? Like how campaigns are run, how policies are made, even how we understand, like, the whole electorate.
It's a super powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, you have to be careful with it. I mean, on the one hand, it could give us better, more accurate data than we've ever had before. But on the other hand, it opens up a whole new can of worms, right? Like things we really need to be thinking about.
Exactly. And it brings us back to something we keep coming back to, this need for transparency and accountability, especially when it comes to these AI systems. Because as we've been seeing, their impact goes way beyond just the digital world. It's affecting the real world in some really big ways. And speaking of real-world impact, there's that whole thing with Jony Ive. Remember, we were talking about him before.
So before the break, we were talking about Jony Ive, the guy behind like every iconic Apple product ever.
Right. Seems like he's at it again, this time diving headfirst into the AI world.
And not with just anyone, right? He's teamed up with OpenAI, the ChatGPT people.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, you got to admit, that's a pretty powerful combination. You've got the design genius who basically shaped how we use tech every day.
Huh.
And then you've got the company that's, like, pushing the limits of what AI can even do.
And nobody knows for sure yet, but the rumors are saying that IVE is trying to completely change how we interact with technology. Like, imagine a world where talking to AI isn't about typing commands or using menus. It's more natural, more like how we talk to each other.
Right, like a conversation instead of us just staring at screens all the time. It does feel like something out of those sci-fi movies we grew up with, you know?
Totally. But also kind of makes sense, right? Like, we've been talking about how the lines are blurring between the real and digital worlds, and AI is kind of leading the charge there.
Absolutely. It's augmenting what we can do, making us more creative, even forcing us to rethink what's possible. I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing.
And with this Joni Ive thing, it's like we're getting a glimpse into a future where AI isn't just this tool we use. It's more like this partner, this collaborator in everything we do with technology.
I mean, it's exciting, right? But I gotta admit, it's a little unnerving, too. How will this change things for us, for our everyday lives, for work, for, like, what it means to even be human? It's a lot.
It is a lot, and it's happening so fast.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what makes these deep dives so interesting, don't you think? I mean, we're not just talking about the newest gadget or whatever. We're really trying to understand the big picture, how these changes are going to impact all of us.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's not just about understanding, right? It's about being aware, asking questions, not just blindly accepting everything. Knowledge is power, as they say. The more we know about this stuff, the better prepared we'll be for whatever's next, right?
Right. And on that note, I think we've done our part with this deep dive. We've looked at the cool stuff AI can do, the ethical side of it, and what might be coming next.
It's a lot to process, for
Yeah.
sure. And this is just the beginning. It's going to be a wild ride, but I think we're ready for it.
Totally ready. So until next time, keep exploring, keep thinking critically, and we'll catch you all on the next deep dive.